The wind howled through the high valley of Montana in 1880, a fierce force that sent flurries of snow swirling violently through the air. The storm had come swiftly, catching everyone off guard. For weeks, folks in the nearby settlements had prepared for winter, but nothing could have prepared them for this tempest. It swept down from the mountains like a wild beast, unleashing snow that buried everything in its path. The once vibrant landscape transformed into a whitewashed world, eerily silent except for the gusts that roared through the trees. In the heart of this relentless storm sat a humble cabin, barely visible beneath the thick blanket of snow. Its wooden walls creaked under the weight, and the small roof sagged ominously as if it might cave in at any moment. Inside, Elise Fontaine found herself grappling with a different kind of turmoil. The cabin was meant to be a refuge, a place where she could find solace and warmth. But now, with the wind battering against its walls and snow seeping through cracks, it felt more like a prison. Elise was alone, save for the life stirring within her. As contractions gripped her body, panic began to rise within her chest. She had hoped to be surrounded by familiar faces when this moment arrived, perhaps a midwife or a friend to offer comfort and support. Instead, isolation enveloped her like the storm outside. The howling wind seemed to echo her fears, whispering doubts that clawed at her heart. With each wave of pain, she clutched her stomach and breathed deeply, trying to focus on what lay ahead rather than what surrounded her. She remembered her mother's words about childbirth, the strength of women who had come before her, and the beauty that often followed the pain. But as the storm raged on outside, Elise felt like she was battling more than just physical discomfort. She was fighting against hopelessness itself. As hours dragged into what felt like an eternity, Elise's determination began to wane. She let out a cry that mingled with the wind's howl, hoping someone might hear her desperate plea. Yet there was only silence. The storm continued to rage, burying the world outside and pressing down on her spirit. Finally, after what felt like an endless fight against time and nature, Elise brought forth new life into that lonely cabin. In her trembling hands lay a tiny bundle wrapped in rags, her newborn baby. Tears streamed down her face as she gazed into the small features of her child, feeling a rush of love that momentarily dulled her pain. But even in this moment of joy, reality loomed heavily over her. She was still trapped in isolation with no one to help. Exhausted and weak from labor, Elise lay back against the cold wooden floorboards and struggled to keep her eyes open. She needed warmth and nourishment for both herself and her baby. Hours passed as she drifted in and out of consciousness, each wave of fatigue pulling her deeper into darkness, while outside the storm continued its relentless assault. Days later, Abel Crowe trudged through the deep snow, with his fur-lined coat pulled tightly around him. He was used to navigating these harsh conditions as a fur trapper. However, this storm had been unlike anything he had ever encountered before. As he pushed forward through drifts higher than his knees, he caught sight of something peculiar, a faint outline of a cabin barely visible through the swirling snow. Curiosity piqued, he approached cautiously but quickly realized that something was wrong. The roof of the cabin had caved in under the weight of snow, creating an eerie shape that looked more like a grave than a home. Abel's heart raced at the sight. He felt an unusual tugging sensation inside him, an instinct that urged him to dig rather than turn away. With determination coursing through him despite the bitter cold biting at his fingers, Abel began to clear away the snow covering the entrance. As he dug deeper into the frozen earth, he uncovered a shallow grave marked by despair but also hope. Hope that there might be life beneath all this frost. When he finally reached inside and found Elise still breathing, Barely alive yet holding on to her child, Abel knew he could not walk away from this discovery. He lifted them gently from their icy prison and carried them toward his lodge miles away from any other soul. Little did he know that both their lives were intertwined by circumstances far greater than mere survival amidst a storm. They were about to share a journey filled with healing and revelations they never expected. Inside the darkened cabin, Elise Fontaine could hear the storm raging beyond her wooden walls like a wild animal prowling for its prey. The wind shrieked, rattling the little home as if it were trying to shake loose the despair within. She lay on the cold floor, her breath quickening with each wave of pain that crashed over her. With every contraction, she felt her body battling against itself, a struggle between instinct and fear. Elise had spent many nights dreaming about becoming a mother, picturing gentle hands holding her newborn, surrounded by warmth and love. Instead, she faced the reality of labor alone, enveloped in shadows and the icy grip of winter. The thought of bringing a child into this desolate world sent shivers through her, but there was no turning back now. The baby demanded to be born, and Elise had no choice but to answer its call. When the first cries of pain echoed through the cabin, she gripped her belly tightly, biting her lip to stifle the sounds threatening to escape. "You can do this," she whispered to herself, though doubt gnawed at her heart. She remembered stories of women who had given birth surrounded by family and friends, women who held each other's hands through labor, sharing whispered comforts and encouragements. But all Elise had was the unyielding wind that howled through cracks in the wood like a cruel reminder of her isolation. As another contraction seized her body, Elise's vision blurred with tears. "It's just pain," she reminded herself repeatedly, yet each surge felt like fire coursing through her veins. She closed her eyes tightly, picturing a warm hearth crackling with flames and the faces of loved ones gathered around her. In that moment of vivid imagination, she found some solace from the storm raging outside. But reality intruded again. The unmistakable feeling that time was slipping away from her like grains of sand. Panic began to rise in her chest as uncertainty loomed larger than ever. Would she have the strength to endure this without anyone by her side? As another wave hit, she gasped for air, focusing on the rhythm of her breathing instead of the fear enveloping her. The minutes dragged on like hours as Elise fought through one contraction after another. Each moment felt eternal, marked only by occasional breaks when fatigue washed over her like an unwelcome guest. In those brief respites, an overwhelming sensation of loneliness settled upon her. She wished for anyone to share this moment, someone who could witness the miraculous thing happening within her body and offer reassurances that everything would turn out all right. Suddenly, there came a deeper pain, a shift within her that told Elise it was time to push. She clenched her fists against the wooden floorboards beneath her as she summoned all the strength she could muster. "You can do this," she repeated louder this time, as if chanting a spell against despair. Outside, the storm continued its relentless assault, but inside Elise's heart, a flicker of determination ignited. With every push, labor became a battle against not just physical pain but also against the tide of hopelessness threatening to drown her spirit. The cabin felt small and suffocating as she leaned into every surge while ignoring the biting cold creeping in from outside. Elation mixed with terror overwhelmed her as she realized what was happening. The life inside her was fighting for freedom. Finally, after what felt like an eternity filled with pain and struggle, Elise felt an extraordinary release as she brought forth new life into the world. Or so she hoped. Her trembling hands found a tiny bundle wrapped in rags. It was her baby. Tears streamed down her face as joy flooded over the exhaustion that gripped her body. She held that precious life close and marveled at its small features despite feeling utterly spent. Yet, even in this moment of triumph, reality hung heavy over Elise's head like dark clouds refusing to part. As fatigue washed over her once more, and consciousness slipped away into shadows from which it might be hard to return, whispers of doubt clawed at her heart once more. Would she be able to protect this innocent child long enough for help to arrive? Lying against the cold floorboards, with love filling one hand and uncertainty gripping the other, Elise closed her eyes and began to fade into darkness, hoping against hope that somewhere out there amidst the storm lay salvation for both of them. The moment finally arrived, a culmination of pain and anticipation that seemed to stretch into eternity. Elise Fontaine gritted her teeth as another wave of contractions surged through her body, pushing her to the brink of despair. The storm outside howled louder, as if it were echoing her own inner turmoil. She could feel the cold creeping in, but there was something even colder lurking in her heart, the weight of solitude as she faced this life-changing moment alone. "Just one more push," she whispered to herself, the words barely audible above the roar of the wind. She could feel the life within her shifting, demanding release. With every ounce of strength she could muster, Elise leaned into the pain, feeling it wash over her like a tide that she had to ride. The floorboards felt unforgiving beneath her as she clenched them tight, desperate for something to anchor her amid the chaos. As she pushed, time seemed to warp. Each second felt like an hour as she battled not only the physical agony, but also the emotional weight of her isolation. Memories flickered through her mind. Images of friends and family gathered around a hearth, laughter echoing in warm rooms filled with light. But here, in this cabin surrounded by a raging storm, there was only darkness and silence. Then suddenly, as if the storm itself had paused to witness this intimate moment, Elise felt an extraordinary shift within her. The baby was coming. With one final push fueled by sheer willpower and desperation, she brought forth new life into the world. In that instant, joy surged through her veins like a fire igniting after a long winter. She heard the first wails of her newborn echo against the walls of the cabin, a sound that pierced through her heavy heart. As she cradled her tiny child in trembling hands, tears streamed down Elise's face, tears of joy mixed with sorrow. She marveled at the delicate features wrapped in rags, feeling an overwhelming sense of love rush over her like warmth from a forgotten sun. Yet beneath that joy lay an undeniable current of hopelessness. The reality of their situation crashed down upon her like an avalanche. She was still alone in this desolate cabin, with no one to help them survive. Elise gazed down at her baby and felt a pang of fear grip her heart. "What will I do now?" she thought, panic rising once more as exhaustion threatened to pull her under. The baby squirmed in response to her touch, and for a moment Elise was filled with hope. The instinct to protect this precious life blossomed within her like spring after a long winter. But the heavy weight of reality pressed down on her shoulders. Who would care for them both in such dire circumstances? Lying there on the cold floorboards, longing for warmth and safety that felt impossible to grasp, Elise turned inward once again. She realized that while giving birth had filled her with joy, it also highlighted the starkness of her isolation. The storm raged on outside as if determined to bury them both beneath its relentless fury. With each labored breath, Elise felt herself fading into darkness again. She fought against it, cradling her newborn close, as if their combined warmth could fend off the cold creeping into her bones. Her mind raced with thoughts of survival and what lay ahead, a future uncertain and fraught with danger. "I will protect you," she whispered to the baby softly, though she felt small and fragile herself. The child gazed up at her with innocent eyes that sparkled like stars trying to shine through clouds. In that moment of connection between mother and child, Elise found strength amid despair. She vowed to fight for them both against whatever awaited outside those walls. Yet fatigue weighed heavily on her eyelids as consciousness ebbed away again, like waves receding from the shore. Even as darkness threatened to take hold once more, Elise clung tightly to hope, the hope that somehow they would be found and saved from their icy prison. As silence enveloped the cabin once more, punctuated only by the soft breathing of her newborn, Elise closed her eyes and surrendered to exhaustion. In that stillness filled with uncertainty and love, she prayed for someone to hear their cries amidst the storm, a glimmer of salvation amid their isolation in a world so harsh and unforgiving. Through the howling winds and swirling snow, Abel Crowe trudged forward, his fur-lined coat pulled tight against the bitter cold of Montana's relentless winter. As a seasoned fur trapper, he had survived many storms, but this one was unlike any he had ever encountered. The air felt thick with tension, and visibility was nearly non-existent as driven snow reduced the world to a ghostly landscape. Visibility was low, but instinct led him onward through the treacherous white drifts that seemed to swallow everything in their path. Abel had been out for days, collecting traps and checking on his lines. He knew the risks of being caught in a storm like this, but it was always a gamble worth taking, until now. The biting fingers of frost had made themselves comfortable in his bones, urging him to seek shelter before the tempest became too fierce. He glanced around for any sign of safety when something peculiar caught his eye through a break in the snowflakes. Just ahead was an odd shape amidst the drifting snow. The outline of it looked wrong. Trees were typically stark and sturdy against such weather, yet this form sagged beneath its own weight. Curiosity piqued. Abel approached cautiously, heart thumping heavily in his chest. It took only moments for his instincts to shift from curiosity to concern as he recognized what lay before him. The roof of a cabin had caved in completely under the relentless pressure of accumulated snow. Stubborn determination stirred inside him as he stepped closer to inspect the collapsed structure more closely. The cabin looked abandoned at first glance. Its windows were frosted over and grimy, and there was no smoke curling from its chimney. Yet something about it sent an unsettling chill down his spine, a sense that something important lingered just beyond view. He knelt beside the cabin's entrance, struggling against the wind that whipped around him as if trying to push him back. Abel cleared away some of the loose snow with gloved hands while peering into the shadowy interior, where darkness reigned supreme. The feeling that something was amiss intensified as he dug deeper into drifts piled against the doorframe. Then he noticed it. A faint impression beneath the frost that suggested signs of life, or at least struggle. A shallow indentation marked where someone might have been buried not far from where he knelt. Dread gripped him tightly at this revelation. Could anyone really be trapped here? Abel thought incredulously. Compelled by instinct and his innate urge to help those in danger, Abel's resolve solidified into action despite growing fear gnawing at him like wolves on a scent trail. With newfound urgency pulsing through him, he began to dig around the edges of what appeared to be a makeshift grave, each scoop revealing more than just snow, but hints of desperation frozen within. As he continued clearing away layers upon layers of ice and snow, Abel's heart raced with apprehension while adrenaline surged through his veins. It wasn't just about survival anymore. It was about rescuing those who might still be clinging onto life beneath all this frost. Finally, breaking through the frozen crust above that shallow indentation revealed more than he could have anticipated. Fingers wrapped tightly around rags that clung desperately to form what appeared to be an infant covered in tattered cloth. A wave of shock washed over him as reality sank deep. There was someone alive below all this. Abel's mind raced even faster than his heartbeat as raw emotion flooded through him. He couldn't believe what lay before him. A mother and child escaping death's grasp right under an avalanche's weight. He carefully reached down further into that icy prison until he located Elise Fontaine herself, barely breathing, yet still fighting for her next breath. A rush of compassion overcame any lingering thoughts of fear about confronting whatever else might lie hidden beyond them. Weary spirit ignited by rediscovered hope, mingled with adrenaline, fueled by desperation, flared within every fiber of Abel's being. Here was an opportunity to save not only 2 lives, but also restore purpose amidst chaos. An unexpected connection forged by fate between himself, the fur trapper, and them, the souls grasping at survival. With strong arms cradling both Elise and her newborn closely against his chest, while battling cold winds outside threatening despair all around them. Abel emerged from behind those dark walls carrying light, determined not only to shield them from physical elements, but also lead them toward warmth waiting miles ahead. Believing wholeheartedly they could find safety again under kinder skies, before long among stillness, native stories wished upon stars softly falling from above like promises yet unfulfilled. As Abel knelt beside the collapsed cabin, the wind howled around him, carrying with it a sense of urgency and despair. He could feel the cold gnawing at his skin, but it was the unease in his gut that kept him anchored to the spot. The instinct to turn back, to seek warmth and safety far away from this haunted place, clawed at him like the icy fingers of winter itself. Yet something deeper stirred within him, a compulsion he could not ignore. He brushed away more snow, revealing the dark mouth of the cabin's entrance. It was a sight he did not want to see, but could not look away from. Doubt crept into his mind, whispering questions that threatened to paralyze him. What if there was no one there? What if it was just a grave? But with each flake of snow he cleared, the feeling of something alive beneath beckoned to him, stronger than any fear he felt. Abel's heart thudded in his chest as he wrestled with his thoughts. He had faced many dangers in his life as a fur trapper, wild animals, treacherous terrain, even harsh weather, but this was different. The weight of responsibility pressed down on him, and he felt torn between the safety of retreating and the moral imperative to dig deeper. Could he really abandon someone who might be fighting for their life just beyond his reach? The idea of walking away gnawed at him like a hungry wolf. He could almost hear the echoes of countless tales about bravery and honor, stories that emphasized the importance of helping those in need. He thought about how helpless Elise might be, trapped beneath layers of snow and ice, perhaps fading with each passing moment. If he turned away now, would he ever forgive himself? Compelled by an unseen force, Abel took a deep breath and plunged his hands back into the snow. The cold burned against his skin as he dug with urgency, each scoop reflecting his determination to uncover whatever lay beneath. With every handful of snow cast aside, a mix of hope and fear surged within him. As he worked, he caught glimpses in his mind, fragments of what could be, a mother holding her child, laughter ringing out in warmth as they found solace together. The thought fueled his resolve, and he pushed harder against the freezing earth. He had always been a man of action, willing to take risks for those who couldn't help themselves. Now was no different. Just as doubt began to creep back in, a thought struck him. What if this woman is all alone? It sent shivers down his spine, stoking the fire within him to keep going. He could not walk away from this moment without knowing. Finally, after what felt like an eternity spent lost in effort, he struck something solid beneath the frost. A hand. His heart raced as adrenaline surged through his veins. Desperation and hope collided within him as he grasped what lay beneath, carefully brushing away more snow to reveal the truth. There they were, a mother and her child, both barely clinging to life. Abandoning caution entirely now, Abel's instincts kicked in full force. He needed to act quickly. Time was slipping away like sand through his fingers. The realization that he had indeed uncovered lives hidden beneath despair ignited a fierce determination within him. With renewed vigor, Abel excavated around them, revealing Elise's pale face and labored breaths. Her eyes fluttered open briefly before drifting shut once more. Panic rose within him as he feared she was fading away. Holding on to hope like a lifeline, Abel wrapped her baby gently in his coat and cradled them both close to him. "Stay with me," he murmured softly into the swirling winds that howled around them. His heart raced not just from exertion, but from the gravity of what he had discovered. Two souls buried under layers of snow and isolation. This wasn't just about survival anymore. It was about connection and purpose. Abel took a moment to steady himself against the biting wind. He had made his choice, not to abandon them, not today. With grim determination etched across his features, he hoisted both mother and child into his arms, shielding them from the storm that raged on around him. Every muscle in his body protested under the weight of their fragile forms, yet Abel forged ahead through the thickening snow, propelled by a sense of destiny that had suddenly taken root within him. There was no turning back now. He would lead them toward safety, a promise born not just of survival, but of hope and humanity amidst the chaos of nature's wrath. As Abel Crowe dug deeper into the snow, his heart raced in tandem with his growing urgency. Finally, the frost gave way to soft skin and small fingers wrapped tightly around rags. A surge of adrenaline propelled him forward as he carefully brushed away more snow, revealing the pale face of Elise Fontaine, her breaths shallow and labored. Panic coursed through him. Her eyes fluttered open momentarily before closing again, and he knew time was not on their side. "Stay with me," he urged, his voice barely above a whisper as he scooped her up gently into his arms. He could feel the warmth of her body slipping away, and desperation ignited a fierce determination within him. He had to get them both to safety. There was no time to lose. Abel shifted his attention back to the tiny bundle nestled against Elise's chest. The baby, swaddled in rags, looked fragile and vulnerable. With careful movements, he took the child into his arms, holding it close to his own body for warmth. The infant was still breathing, but its breaths were faint and irregular. "Please let us be quick," Abel prayed silently, as he assessed how far he would need to travel through this storm. The biting wind whipped against his cheeks like icy needles as he stood at the threshold of what had once been a home, filled with life and warmth but now felt like a tomb. Abel forced himself to think clearly despite the chaos swirling around him. He needed to get back to his lodge, a place where warmth awaited them. But every step made him acutely aware of how treacherous the terrain could be. He tightened both mother and child closer against him, as if they could share heat through sheer willpower alone. The moment Abel stepped out from under the wreckage of the cabin, he was hit by another wave of biting cold that made him shiver uncontrollably. Snowflakes danced frantically around them while gusts of wind threatened to steal breath from his lungs, just as swiftly as they would suffocate any lingering hope. Yet within this whiteout world lay purpose. Each stride became fueled by an unyielding resolve to shield them from despair. With each step through deeper drifts than before, Abel concentrated only on moving forward. He couldn't afford distractions or doubts clouding his mind now that lives rested in his hands. He envisioned reaching warmth, a fire crackling in his lodge, blankets wrapped tight around their trembling forms, a family formed not by blood but by shared survival. As he trudged deeper into the storm's fury, every ounce of strength surged through him like electricity sparking from within. Memories of stories told around campfires filled with laughter rushed back, stories about bravery matched with kindness, how heroes were made not just by bold deeds but by compassion when faced with others' vulnerability. The baby shifted slightly against him, a weak murmur that sent a thrill down Abel's spine. It was alive. That miraculous sign affirmed everything else. There was still hope amidst this chaos for them all. After what felt like hours battling against nature's wrath, Abel finally caught sight of his lodge peeking through the trees ahead, a small haven devoid of snowdrifts towering over it like sentinels standing guard against winter's cold grip. He pressed onward with renewed determination, while exhaustion tugged at his limbs mercilessly threatening collapse at any moment. The thought of delivering them both into safety ignited something unquenchable deep within. He reached the door and pushed it open with all his might, using one shoulder while balancing Elise precariously in one arm, along with her baby cradled protectively in another hand. As soon as they crossed into that warm sanctuary, a wave of heat enveloped them, a stark contrast from outside, and Abel felt relief wash over him, nearly sweeping fatigue away completely. "Help!" Abel called out frantically as he staggered inside, the urgency clear in every syllable escaping breathless lips echoing against timber walls adorned with animal pelts. Their survival depended on it now. Warmth enveloped Elise when she was laid upon blankets placed next to a roaring fire, blazing brightly that chased away shadows generated by darkness encroaching outside. The mere act igniting flickers across her lifeless expression, seemingly trying desperately, fighting shadows closing in dangerously close. And there beneath layers upon layers, swathed tenderly around mother and child, lay hope blossoming anew. An unbreakable connection formed during a shared struggle amidst winter's harshest embrace, leading toward salvation, waiting patiently beyond bitter winds, howling endlessly, still spiraling nearby, echoing reminders, reminding everyone within those walls. Life continued even amid chaos surrounding hearts yearning deeply for one another, always standing united. Despite storms converging outside, falling endlessly day after day, forging bonds stronger than ice encapsulating all journeys yet taken. Once inside the warmth of his lodge, Abel felt a flicker of hope ignite within him, but it was quickly overshadowed by the grim reality of their situation. He laid Elise and her newborn on a bed of blankets near the roaring fire that crackled with life. The warmth enveloped them, yet it did little to ease the worry gnawing at his insides. He had limited supplies, and he could feel the weight of responsibility pressing down on him like an avalanche. Elise's skin was cold to the touch, and her eyelids fluttered as she drifted in and out of consciousness. Abel glanced around the small cabin, searching for anything that might help him nurse her back to health. There was some dried meat hanging from hooks on the walls, a few jars of preserved vegetables tucked away, and a small supply of firewood stacked neatly by the hearth. But beyond that, he knew he would need more food, more warmth, and more time than he had. His heart pounded as he rummaged through his meager stash of supplies. He needed to stabilize Elise quickly, She was so frail and pale that he feared she wouldn't survive without proper care. In a moment of desperation, he pinched some snow into a cup made from bark to melt over the fire for warmth and hydration. Then he took hold of a piece of jerky, tearing tiny shreds for both Elise and her baby. As he worked diligently to prepare their meager meal, amidst increasingly anxious thoughts about whether it would be enough or if it could even stave off death's grasp, he became acutely aware that there were no other souls around for miles. The isolation pressed heavily against him like an invisible wall. Should something go wrong, there would be no one to come to their aid. No fellow trappers nearby or townsfolk who could share resources. His eyes darted between Elise's pallid face and the infant curled tightly in its rags beside her. Abel took a moment to breathe deeply while allowing himself to absorb how precious this life was. The soft breaths emanating from the babe reminded him why he couldn't afford failure now. After warming some snow water over the fire until steam billowed softly into the air, Abel returned to where Elise lay nestled beneath blankets, her body trembling despite all efforts to keep her warm. Tentatively lifting her head slightly with one hand while holding water with another, he helped place the makeshift cup to her lips, only for it to spill slightly when she stirred agitatedly at first under such gentle handling, yet soon drank eagerly once she recognized moisture passing into parched lips. The struggle felt endless. Every second stretched uncomfortably long, while anxiety coursed through him as if feeding off uncertainty raging outside those walls. The storm, still howling loudly enough for gusts threatening any sense of tranquility they might hope possess after just escaping devastation hours before. The world outside remained unforgiving, while inside spirits hung precariously in balance between hope and despair. But then came another struggle. Would Elise have enough strength left? After what seemed like an eternity spent nursing Elise back toward health, and shuddering at how fragile both mother and child appeared under duress with barely any strength remaining between them, Abel felt time slipping away even faster now, like grains caught forever in an hourglass slowly running out. With each passing moment weighed down by uncertainty, caused by dwindling supplies combined with their unforgiving confinement under nature's wrath, he knew decision-making would become paramount soon enough. There were roads needing traveled across icy paths leading towards others equipped perhaps better than himself, suitable resources available if only fate allowed reaching them unscathed further beyond these shadowy confines. Abel gazed down upon those two souls who represented everything worth fighting for now, blossoming faintly amid desperate circumstances, fraught with peril, lurking always outside, waiting silently as winter unleashed fury against all unsuspecting prey daring venture forth. Every fiber within urged him onward, not merely for survival alone, but rather out of profound connection forged unexpectedly during trials faced together amidst chaos, requiring unparalleled courage, prevailing over fear instilled rooting ever deeper, wanting desperately against odds stacked overwhelmingly high. He looked back toward the door leading out into blustery winds swirling frantically outside again. The choice loomed clearly ahead. Risk facing frigid conditions once more where dangers prowled hidden yet waiting around every corner, or remain imprisoned here, clinging tenuously onto fleeting moments, teetering upon brink uncertainty, visible only deepening shadows surrounding them, wrapped tightly together under layers shielding from winter's bitter gaze, growing heavier still as night began creeping slowly closer, yielding no reprieve. As the fire crackled softly in the lodge, providing a comforting warmth against the howling storm outside, Elise slowly began to regain consciousness. The world around her came into focus gradually, as if she were surfacing from a deep sleep. With each blink of her heavy eyelids, she recognized the room, a stark contrast to the icy and desolate cabin where she had fought for survival. Abel Crowe hovered nearby, his worried gaze fixed on her. "Elise," he said, his voice gentle yet urgent. "You're safe now. Just breathe." The warmth of his words wrapped around her, but confusion clouded her mind as fragments of memory flickered like shadows in the corners of her thoughts. She felt fragile, both physically and emotionally, but there was something soothing about being alive, something worth holding on to despite the memories threatening to invade. Where am I?" she managed to whisper, her throat dry and scratchy. "You're in my lodge. I found you under the snow," Abel replied, shifting closer with a cup of warm water in hand. "Drink this. It'll help." With trembling hands, Elise took the cup and sipped carefully. As the warmth flowed down her throat, it rekindled some strength within her. But as her senses sharpened, so did painful memories that clawed at her heart. A past filled with betrayal and abandonment that still weighed heavily on her soul. What happened? Why was I... Her voice trailed off as reality crashed back into place. Shadows danced before her eyes as she fought against the creeping despair that threatened to envelop her again. Abel watched closely as recognition dawned upon Elise's face. He sensed the turmoil brewing within her and knew that once she began to speak, there would be no turning back from what lay ahead. "I was running. From them," she finally admitted, a shiver running through her as she spoke those words aloud for what felt like the first time ever. For years, they'd echoed silently within while hidden away from prying eyes. "Who did this to you?" Abel asked, gently but firmly, wanting to understand so he could help not only with their immediate survival, but also with what weighed on her heart. Her breaths quickened as shadows from a past life emerged clear, faces filled with love cloaked in deception. Men who had claimed affection, yet left behind only pain and shadows of sorrow suffocated by lies woven skillfully into deceitful promises unfulfilled. "They abandoned me," she said between gasps for air laced deeply with emotion surging forth. "I thought they cared, but when I needed them most, they left me alone." Abel nodded in understanding. Pieces fell into place. The reason behind Elise's isolation had become evident through pain, stitched together carefully beneath layers of rags wrapped tightly around resilience, forged by suffering long endured without hope or mercy, offered through time spent alone facing overwhelming odds stacked high against every heartbeat, echoing struggles faced silently throughout darkened nights. "They wanted control over me," she continued haltingly as tears prickled at the corners of her eyes. "When they discovered I was pregnant, they turned their backs on me when all I wanted was love, a family." Her words became ragged as emotions broke free from shackles formed years prior, hidden away beneath snowdrifts piled high atop. Dreams dashed beneath cruel intentions laid bare like stones scattered across paths once bright, now grown dimmer over days, enduring loneliness, stretching onward interminably beyond sight, creating distance further still, residing longer than memory might otherwise hold dear, forever changing fate itself along jagged edges awaiting chance encounters, sparking flames needing nurture through shared struggles, kindled anew amid darkness, swirling always lurking dangerously close during winter storms, raging relentlessly outside this small shelter, forged hard-won bonds, forming connections stronger than ice. "I ran into hiding," Elise whispered after calming herself, somewhat following an emotional tempest unleashed purely by recalling events etched against fragile walls surrounding deeper scars unspoken too long, battled constantly within since threats never truly vanished, even after days spent lost, wandering forevermore trapped inside echoes reverberating, haunting hearts, seeking solace, finding only silence lingering, helplessly, chasing desperately after shadows fading further down paths unknown, illuminated solely by echoes yearning louder, crashing waves yearning return. "It's all right now," Abel soothed gently, despite raw uncertainty, gnawing painfully, still clinging desperately tightly intertwined between healing wounds forgotten somewhere far beyond these walls, built sturdy against nature's wrath. Away from dangers stalking endlessly, waiting, always hidden, unforgiving, still present looming, smothering hope wherever just beyond reach, longing fulfillment, promised ever chasing eternity, slipping ever forward, glimpses fleeting futures, yet imagined resting lightly. Suspended longing sweet reunion, beckoning lifelong cherished desires, felt vulnerable, exposed hearts yearning deeper, still battling fiercely, souls intertwined, searching endlessly, treasuring life anew while forging bonds stronger than winter storm's wrath swirling ever fiercely. Round these fragile confines, long relinquished fears, nurtured instead, vibrant possibilities lying patiently ahead, brightening up dreams, soft glows igniting warm embraces, forming promises made nurturing deeper connections, binding fiercely together, becoming more resilient with every heartbeat, pulsing steadily onward towards brighter tomorrows, hopeful beginnings, yearning eternally towards horizons, painted bright once more, glowing vibrantly alive, renewed against darkest nights held delicately tight, rooted firmly amidst layers shielding them all alive, here together, always fighting onward, never giving up no matter how far storms may rage. As days passed within the warmth of his lodge, Abel and Elise began to form a delicate bond forged out of shared struggles and raw vulnerability. Their connection deepened as they spent quiet moments together, each speaking softly about their fears and hopes amidst the uncertainty that loomed outside the walls. Elise found herself reaching for Abel's hand whenever she felt overwhelmed, her once distant demeanor softening as she recognized the kindness in his eyes. He was unlike anyone she had known before, not just a stranger who had rescued her from despair, but also a man who listened without judgment. The warmth he exuded was authentic, and slowly her heart opened to the possibility that not all men were like those who had abandoned her. One evening, as snow fell thickly outside, Elise recounted more memories from her past. "I used to dream of having a family, a loving husband, children playing around me," she admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. Abel's gaze remained steady on her as she spoke, urging her to continue. "But instead, I became a prisoner of my own hopes, only to have them shattered." "You're not a prisoner anymore," Abel said gently, squeezing her hand. "You're here, alive, with your baby. You deserve a chance to build a future." Elise didn't respond immediately. Tears welled in her eyes at the thought of what could be. The pain of betrayal still coursed through her veins like ice, but in Abel's presence there was a flicker of warmth, sparks that ignited feelings she had thought long extinguished. Their conversations often drifted to dreams, yet unfulfilled. Abel shared his experiences as a fur trapper. Tales of adventure woven with laughter filled the space between them like music, permeating the silence surrounding their refuge. "I've wandered these mountains for years alone," he confessed one night, leaning closer to the fire, the shadows dancing across his rugged face. "But I never appreciated what I had until now." "What do you mean?" Elise asked curiously. "I've seen countless wonders and sights," he replied thoughtfully. "But until I found you both, it all felt hollow." His voice softened, revealing an honesty that cut through the remaining shreds of loneliness they shared. "Now, I see how precious life can be when you hold someone that matters close." The weight of Abel's admission hung between them, creating an atmosphere heavy with unspoken truths that seemed too fragile to disturb. Elise realized that what they had was special, an unexpected gift formed from adversity and necessity molding into hope. Days turned into weeks as Elise gradually regained her strength under the care of Abel's attentiveness. Each dawn brought renewed determination, as both sought to protect what little they had forged from against winter's relentless grip. Together, they would plan their next steps. Tiny instants spent preparing for whatever lay ahead emerged through conversations that roamed toward brighter horizons they cautiously dared imagine. "Once the snow melts," Abel said one afternoon while they raked embers from the fire together, "I'll take you both back to town. People will help us find resources." The thought ignited excitement within Elise's chest. They could build something new together beyond mere survival. What if we find people who could hurt us again? The question slipped from her lips before she could stop it. Longing, shaped by scars, filled every corner of her heart. Abel drew her eyes back to him as he said firmly, "I won't let anyone hurt you again, not on my watch." His words struck deep, a lifeline pulling Elise closer into safety built upon trust and tenderness, sprouting slowly under layers of pain and fear, molded anew in hard-won resilience shared amongst storms, now fading gently in consciousness, shed away embracing hope, yet approaching even farther down paths still full. Waiting patiently ahead, beyond those darker memories woven intricately stark lifelines, exceeding mere survival forcing souls together, blossoming amid newfound bonds forged, fighting against even fate, holding them tight safe until brighter tomorrows awaited arriving nearer now. A promise, beckoning forged under winter's heavy wrath, transforming softness where love could finally conquer. Each day became an affirmation, an act of faith swinging gently toward healing. Fears ebbed, giving way for laughter, sweetening bitter realities, strengthening spirits, lifted among those two uncertain yet steadily entwined, rising together above hardships, faced forged deep connections, kindling fires, patiently nurturing bright destinies, once merely whispered, lightly cradled within fragile hearts, healing amidst frost whilst growing louder, warming brightly brighter illuminating, holding tightly fiercely flickering, promising hope, alive daring face dangers standing together, united forging ahead no matter how far storms may rage. Life bloomed anew, rooted evermore, despite shadows chasing waiting far behind, anchored firmly light carried high boldly shining. As days turned into a blur of uncertainty and urgency, Abel watched closely over the fragile newborn nestled against Elise's chest. The baby's small body was swaddled in rags that provided little warmth, and its breaths came in shallow, irregular gasps. Each breath sounded like a battle for survival, and Elise's heart ached with desperation as she fought against her own declining health. "Please, save my baby," Elise whispered weakly, her voice barely audible over the crackling fire. She looked up at Abel, her eyes filled with a mix of fear and determination. "You have to help us both." Abel nodded, his throat tight with emotion. He could see the toll that the ordeal had taken on Elise. She was pale and trembling, her strength waning as she fought to remain conscious. But in that moment, all that mattered was the life of the tiny child who fought so valiantly against the odds. "I'll do everything I can," he promised, feeling a surge of protective instinct rise within him. With his heart racing, Abel moved swiftly around the lodge, gathering what few supplies he had left. He prepared warm milk from dried sources, hoping it might provide some nourishment for the delicate infant. As he worked diligently, his mind raced with worry. He knew time was not on their side. The winter storm still raged outside, isolating them from any possible help. He returned to Elise's side and gently lifted the baby from her arms, cradling the fragile form in one hand while supporting its head with the other. The little one felt incredibly light as he brought it closer to his chest, willing warmth to seep into its tiny body. "Just hold on," he murmured softly, feeling a wave of determination wash over him. Elise watched helplessly as Abel took charge, but she couldn't shake the feeling of despair creeping in as her own strength faded with each passing moment. "What if I can't? What if we don't make it?" she stammered, tears welling in her eyes as fear clutched at her heart. "Don't say that," Abel replied firmly, maintaining eye contact with her to bolster her spirit. "You are stronger than you know. We will get through this together." The conviction in his voice seemed to ignite a flicker of hope within Elise, even as darkness threatened to engulf her. As Abel carefully fed the baby drops of warm milk, he noticed how the infant struggled at first to latch on but eventually began to suckle softly. A sense of relief washed over him. Every tiny movement was a sign of life and resilience. Yet Elise's own condition was deteriorating. She could feel herself slipping away like the shrinking flames in the hearth. "Elise," Abel said softly, turning his attention back to her. "You need to drink something too." He scooped up another makeshift cup of warm water and brought it to her lips. She took a few sips, but then hesitated, pain crossing her features as she realized how weak she felt. "I'm so scared," she whispered, almost breaking into tears. "What if I can't hold on long enough?" "Look at your baby," Abel urged gently, gesturing toward the child who was slowly regaining strength with each drop of nourishment. "That little one needs you. You have both fought too hard for this moment." Elise nodded slowly, drawing strength from Abel's words, but it was clear she struggled to keep her eyes open. "I can't lose them. Not after everything," she managed to say before surrendering briefly to exhaustion. "Stay with me," Abel insisted, placing the baby back in her arms and resting a hand on her shoulder. "You are not alone in this fight." He could feel the weight of responsibility pressing down on him. Their lives were intertwined now more than ever. With every effort he made for Elise and the newborn, he felt an unwavering commitment surge within him, a promise that he would protect them both at all costs. Hours passed as they battled against time and nature's fury outside. Every sound, the howling wind, the crackling fire, echoed their struggle for survival. Abel stayed by their side through the night, offering warmth and encouragement while Elise fought against her weariness and focused on her baby. As dawn crept slowly into view beyond the storm's veil, hope began to pierce through the darkness that had wrapped itself around them for so long. The infant had grown stronger under their care, and Elise found herself grasping onto that hope as tightly as she held her child. With every heartbeat shared between them, every breath taken in unison, Elise realized she had not just a life to protect, but also a bond to nurture into something enduring and beautiful, despite whatever lay ahead. Together, they would face whatever challenges remained. They would rise above adversity, fortified by love and resilience that had blossomed amidst chaos, a testament of survival deeper than any winter storm could ever erase. With the storm finally behind them, Abel and Elise settled into a fragile rhythm within the safety of the lodge. The winds that had once howled like angry specters were now reduced to a soft whisper, and the world outside transformed into a serene landscape, blanketed in fresh snow glistening under the emerging sun. The aftermath of the storm brought not only stillness but also hope, a chance to heal and regroup. Inside, the warmth of the fire crackled softly, enveloping them in a cocoon of safety. Abel tended to the flames, ensuring they burned bright and strong while casting flickering shadows across the room. He felt relieved to see Elise's color returning gradually, her strength slowly replenishing after days spent fighting for life. The moments of calm they shared allowed him to breathe deeply, though worries still lurked on the edges of his mind. Elise cradled her newborn closely, feeling the warmth radiate from the tiny body nestled against her chest. Each day brought with it small victories. The baby's cries grew stronger, each gasp more confident than the last. As she looked down at her child, she felt a sense of purpose igniting within her bruised heart. The love she had yearned for was now tangible, real, and right in her arms. "Can you believe we made it through?" Abel asked one evening as he set aside a fresh load of firewood. He glanced at Elise with a smile that lit up his rugged features. "You've both done remarkably well." Tears pooled in Elise's eyes as she nodded, overwhelmed by gratitude and relief. It was hard to fathom that she had gone from the depths of despair to this moment filled with warmth and connection. "I don't know what I would have done without you," she admitted softly. "You saved us. Both of us." "I just did what anyone would do," Abel replied, brushing off her praise as he often did with humility. Yet, deep inside, he knew their bond had grown in ways he hadn't anticipated. There was now an emotional connection woven between them through shared trials. With newfound determination coursing through her veins, Elise began to assist Abel around the lodge as they regained their routine. She helped prepare meals from their limited supplies and took joy in watching her baby thrive. The small acts of normalcy brought with them a much-needed sense of stability amidst the uncertainty of what lay ahead. Abel would often watch her work, marveling at how resilient she had become during this time of healing. Moments spent together cooking or sharing stories echoed with laughter, an antidote to the weighty shadows that had haunted them both prior to their arrival here. Still, despite their immediate safety, they were acutely aware of their continued isolation and dwindling supplies. "Once things settle completely outside," Abel said one day while looking out at the melting snowbanks littering their view beyond the doorframe, "we'll need to consider our next steps." "What do you mean?" Elise asked curiously, wiping flour from her hands as she focused intently on him. Abel turned back toward her, his expression serious. "We can't stay here forever. We'll need food, resources, people who can help." He paused, gauging her reaction before continuing. "I'll venture out to find assistance when it's safe enough." "Do you think they could help? What if we're not safe out there?" A hint of fear laced Elise's voice as memories of betrayal threatened to surface again. Abel stepped closer, placing a reassuring hand on her shoulder. "I won't let anything happen to you or your baby again," he vowed earnestly. "We'll face whatever comes together." Elise met his gaze and found comfort in his resolve. It was a promise that sustained her spirits through lingering doubts and fears that threatened to creep back in. The thought of being alone haunted her mind, still too fresh beneath layers, built carefully over time, since finding sanctuary awaited beyond storms, carried forth by winter winds pressing onward, always just ahead, lurking, patiently waiting. Each day brought with it new challenges, but also reminders that together they were stronger. The aftershocks of survival pushed them toward growth, hearts beating steadily alongside hopes rebirthed, reaching upward toward brighter days shining above their heads while navigating unfamiliar grounds ahead. Every step filled anticipation, every whisper shared, forging deeper connections, kindling warmth, gently coaxing souls forth, illuminating paths previously dimmed beneath burdens carried far too long unshackled finally from chains once believed lasting. The storm may have faded, but it was clear to both that their journey had truly just begun, one rooted deeply within resilience, shared amid memories, forged in light, blossoming brightly along open horizons, beckoning forward eagerly, awaiting discovery once more. As the sun rose higher in the sky, casting warm rays into the lodge, Elise Fontaine felt a newfound sense of strength blossom within her. The storm had passed, leaving behind a world washed clean by its fury, and the silence that filled the landscape was not just an absence of noise but a canvas for new beginnings. It was a reminder that she, too, had survived, against all odds. Elise sat up slowly, cradling her baby against her chest, feeling the rhythmic rise and fall of the infant's tiny breaths. Each breath was a testament to their shared struggle, a whispered promise that life continued even after the darkest of nights. With every moment spent nurturing her child, she embraced the reality that survival was only the first step. Now came the opportunity to thrive. Abel entered the room with a fresh pot of warm milk, setting it down carefully on a table beside her. He wore a smile of pride as he caught a glimpse of Elise and the baby. "You're both looking better every day," he said, his voice warm and encouraging. It was clear that he had become not just a protector but also someone who believed in her potential to rise above her past. "Thank you for everything," Elise replied, her heart swelling with gratitude. "I don't know how I would have made it through without you." Abel shook his head modestly. "You've shown incredible strength." "I've merely provided a shelter." She watched him as he moved about the room with ease, gathering firewood and ensuring that the cozy warmth enveloping them didn't fade. Their bond had strengthened during these days together. Moments shared turned into conversations filled with laughter and deep understanding. They spoke of their pasts, of loss and betrayal, but also of hopes and dreams for the future. "Once we're ready," Abel said, glancing out the window at the melting snow, "I'll take you into town. There are people there who can help us gather supplies." Elise felt a flutter of anxiety at this thought. What if I see them, those men? What if I can't face them again? Though she felt stronger physically, memories could be hauntingly powerful. "They don't control your life anymore," Abel replied firmly, stepping closer to assure her with his presence. "You have every right to reclaim your story." His conviction resonated within her, stirring up feelings she hardly dared entertain before. The idea of facing her past invigorated her spirit. It was time to take back what had been stolen from her. Her dreams, her hopes, and even her identity. Elise took a deep breath, feeling empowered by Abel's unwavering support and belief in her resilience. "You're right," she said with newfound determination. "I deserve a chance to build something beautiful. Not just for me, but for my baby." The days passed swiftly as they continued to prepare for their journey ahead. Abel taught Elise how to gather firewood effectively and share stories about his life as a fur trapper, how each day brought its own challenges but also surprises that made it worthwhile. She learned quickly how to manage tasks around the lodge as well, allowing them to find comfort in routine while they admired the beauty and peace around them. On particularly clear nights, they would sit by the fire together, discussing their hopes for the future beneath starlit skies, illuminating dreams yet forming beyond horizons, beckoning just out of reach. Waiting patiently until dawn arrived, promising renewal, bringing light that caressed every corner, filled openly. Fragile hearts still healing from storms endured long ago, reminding even darkness would not last forever. One evening, as they shared thoughts about tomorrow's journey toward town where opportunities awaited their arrival, like gentle whispers inviting deeper connections forged in shared experiences, Abel turned serious once more. "Whatever happens out there, No matter what you face, you won't be alone. Elise swallowed hard against rising emotion, realizing how intertwined their fates had become. She found courage igniting within so much love fostered between them stronger than anything she'd ever known before. Reassurance surged through her veins, bolstered every breath taken, finding solace, nestled tightly wrapped between resilient arms, shining brightly warm, holding on to bright futures now unfolding anew. Despite trials tested, twisting winding paths traversed safely safe together. With each heartbeat shared like prayers spoken aloud, standing united, firmly faces bright against all odds faced, channeling each memory against lingering nightmares, suffering slowly retreating. Together they would rise like dawn's golden embrace, breaking free from nights, once dark, lingering shadows wished long forgotten, chasing only brightness ahead. Their journey had just begun, a new beginning rooted deep within resilience, blossoming strong. A testament forged in survival, woven beautifully alongside bonds enduring fiercely against storms, forever yielding brighter tomorrows, alive believing fiercely, yearning toward life, reclaimed resolutely, healed, unified, always. One courageous spirit, fiercely devoted, dreaming together, capturing hope anew,